Maya never imagined her life would change in a single phone call. She was finishing her shift at the hospital, exhausted after a 14-hour day, when her mother's frantic voice came through the phone. There had been an accident, a terrible one, and it involved Adrian, her older sister's fiancé. Her hands shook as she drove to the trauma center across town. The roads blurred past her as questions raced through her mind. Was he okay? Was Isabel with him? What had happened? When she arrived, the scene was chaos. Adrian's parents stood in the waiting room, his mother sobbing into her husband's chest. Hospital staff rushed back and forth. And there, in the corner, sat her own parents with faces that looked 10 years older than they had that morning. "Where's Isabel?" Maya asked, looking around for her sister. Her father's jaw tightened. "We don't know. She's not answering her phone." That should have been the first warning sign, but Maya was too worried about Adrian to think clearly. The doctors finally came out with news that made everyone's heart sink. Adrian was alive, but barely. A drunk driver had run a red light and hit his car at full speed. The impact had been devastating. He'd survived the surgery, but now he was in a coma. The doctors couldn't say when or if he would wake up. Maya felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. She'd known Adrian for 3 years, ever since Isabel brought him home for Sunday dinner. He was always kind to her, asking about her medical studies while everyone else focused on Isabel's modeling career. He remembered small details like how she took her coffee or her favorite type of books. He felt like the big brother she never had. The wedding had been scheduled for 2 weeks away. Isabel had been planning it for months, turning their parents' house into command central for what she called the event of the decade. The guest list had over 300 names. The dress cost more than a car. Everything was supposed to be perfect. Now Adrian lay unconscious in the ICU and Isabel was nowhere to be found. 3 days passed like a nightmare that wouldn't end. Maya visited Adrian every day after her shifts, sitting beside his bed and talking to him even though he couldn't respond. She told him about her patients, about funny things that happened in the hospital cafeteria, about anything she could think of. The nurses said it might help. Isabel finally called on the 4th day. Maya's mother answered, and within seconds she was shouting into the phone. Maya had never heard her mother sound like that, raw and angry and desperate all at once. When the call ended, her mother sat down heavily and said words that didn't make sense. "She's not coming back. She said she can't handle this. She's in Paris with someone named Derek." The room went silent. Isabel had left, just abandoned Adrian when he needed her most. Maya felt sick. This wasn't the sister she knew. Isabel could be selfish and dramatic, sure, but this was something else entirely. That evening, both families gathered at Adrian's parents' house. His grandfather was there too, a stern man in his 80s who'd built the family's tech company from nothing. Lawyers sat around the dining table with stacks of papers. Maya felt completely out of place, still in her scrubs because she'd come straight from the hospital. Adrian's grandfather cleared his throat and began speaking in a voice that commanded attention. "I'm going to be direct because we don't have time for anything else. Adrian turns 35 in 3 days. According to the family trust I established, if he's not married by his birthday, his shares in the company transfer to his cousin Victor." Maya's father leaned forward. "But surely given the circumstances, there must be exceptions." "No exceptions," one of the lawyers said, sliding a thick document across the table. "The trust is ironclad. We've had 3 different firms review it. There's no way around it." Adrian's mother's voice cracked as she spoke. "Victor will destroy everything. He's already told people he plans to sell the company in pieces. 10,000 employees will lose their jobs. Everything Adrian built, everything he cares about, will be gone." Maya still didn't understand why she was in this meeting. This was family business. Important business. She was just the little sister of the runaway bride. Then Adrian's grandfather turned to look directly at her. His eyes were sharp despite his age. "We need someone to marry Adrian. Before his birthday. Someone the courts will accept as a legitimate spouse." The words hung in the air like smoke. Maya's brain refused to process them at first. Her mother spoke quietly. "They're asking you, Maya." "What? No, that's crazy. I can't just marry someone who's in a coma. That's not even legal, is it?" The lawyer pulled out another document. "It is legal with medical proxy consent from his parents and a judge's approval, which we can get. We already have the paperwork started." Maya stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor.
This is insane.
You can't be serious. I barely know Adrian. I'm not even finished with my residency. I can't just become someone's wife because my sister ran away. Her father's voice was tired. Maya, please just listen. Listen to what? To how you want me to fix Isabel's mess. Again, it was true and everyone knew it. All her life, Maya had been cleaning up after her sister. Covering for her, making excuses, picking up the pieces. But this was too much. Adrian's mother stood and walked over to Maya. Her eyes were red from days of crying. I know this is unfair. I know we have no right to ask this of you. But those 10,000 people who work for Adrian's company, they have families, children, mortgages, and Adrian himself. If he wakes up and finds out everything he worked for is gone because of a birthday deadline, it will destroy him. If he wakes up, Maya whispered. The doctors don't even know if he will. But if he does, wouldn't you want him to have something to wake up to? Maya closed her eyes. She thought about Adrian lying in that hospital bed. She thought about the nurses who'd been so kind to her during her training. Many of them had spouses who worked at Adrian's company. She thought about the innovations his company had created, the medical software that actually saved lives. And she thought about how she'd spent her whole life trying to do the right thing while Isabel did whatever she wanted. The grandfather spoke again. If you do this, we'll make sure you're protected. A prenuptial agreement, financial security. You can have an annulment the moment it's safe to do so. We're not trying to trap you. We're trying to save what Adrian built. Maya looked around the room at all these desperate faces. She felt the weight of thousands of lives on her shoulders, put there by a sister who'd run away and a grandfather's stubborn trust rules. I need to think, she said. But even as she said it, she knew what her answer would be, because that was who Maya was, the responsible one, the one who stayed, the one who sacrificed. 2 days later, she stood in Adrian's hospital room wearing a simple white dress borrowed from her mother. A judge performed the ceremony while machines beeped steadily in the background. Adrian's parents cried. Her parents looked relieved and guilty at the same time. Maya held Adrian's unresponsive hand and repeated vows to a man who couldn't hear them. When the judge pronounced them married, she looked down at the ring on her finger and wondered what she'd just done to her life. She was 29 years old, and she just married a stranger in a coma to save his company from his own family's rules. The worst part was the small voice in her head that whispered, this was somehow all her fault for not being enough to make her sister stay. The first night in Adrian's penthouse, Maya sat on the edge of a bed that wasn't hers and cried, not loud, dramatic tears like Isabel would have shed, just quiet ones that slipped down her cheeks while she stared at the unfamiliar room around her. The lawyers had insisted she move in immediately. For appearances, they said. If anyone questioned the legitimacy of the marriage, having separate addresses would be ammunition for Victor's legal team. So here she was, surrounded by expensive furniture and floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city, feeling more alone than she'd ever felt in her tiny apartment. Her phone buzzed. Another message from a colleague at the hospital. Word had spread fast about her sudden marriage. The questions were all the same. When did this happen? Why didn't you tell anyone? Isn't he your sister's fiancé? She turned off her phone and pulled the covers over her head. The next morning, Maya forced herself out of bed at 5. She had a shift starting at 7, and she needed to maintain some sense of normalcy. As she made coffee in Adrian's enormous kitchen, his mother called. How are you holding up, dear? Maya appreciated that she didn't pretend everything was fine. I'm managing. I'm going to the hospital this morning. Would you like me to sit with him so you can go straight to work? No, Maya said quickly. I mean, thank you, but I'd like to see him first. It became her routine. Every morning before her shift, she'd stop at the hospital and spend 30 minutes with Adrian. She'd tell him about her plans for the day, update him on hospital gossip, read snippets from medical journals. The nurses started recognizing her, offering sympathetic smiles. You're here more than most family members, one nurse told her. He's lucky to have you. Maya didn't feel lucky. She felt like an imposter playing a role she'd never auditioned for. The real challenge started 2 weeks after the wedding when Adrian's company held an emergency board meeting. As Adrian's wife and medical proxy, Maya was expected to attend. She sat in a conference room full of men in expensive suits who looked at her like she was a stain on their leather chairs. Victor was there, sitting at the opposite end of the table with a smile that made Maya's skin crawl. He was Adrian's cousin, but they couldn't have been more different. Where Adrian was known for his integrity, Victor had a reputation for cutting corners and crushing competition. "Let's address the elephant in the room," Victor said, leaning back in his chair. "We have a company in crisis, and our CEO is incapacitated. His new wife, who none of us knew existed until 2 weeks ago, is suddenly making decisions. Does anyone else see a problem here?" Several board members shifted uncomfortably. Maya felt her face flush, but she kept her voice steady. "I'm not making decisions. I'm representing Adrian's interest until he can do so himself." "How convenient that you married him right before his birthday. Some might call that opportunistic." Adrian's father stood up. "That's enough, Victor. The marriage is legal and legitimate. Maya is family now." "Family," Victor repeated, making the word sound dirty. "Is that what we're calling gold diggers now?" Maya wanted to throw something at him. Instead, she opened the folder in front of her. She'd spent the last 3 nights reading everything she could about Adrian's company, learning the terminology, understanding the projects. If they thought she'd crumble under pressure, they were wrong. Adrian was working on expanding the telehealth platform before the accident, she said, pulling out documents. The development team says they're ready to move forward, but they need approval for the next phase of funding. "I've reviewed the projections, and the potential impact on rural healthcare access is significant." The room went quiet. The CFO leaned forward. "You understood the technical specifications?" "I'm a doctor," Maya said. "I understand healthcare technology better than most people in this room, and I know what Adrian would want. He built this company to make healthcare better, not to make a quick profit." She saw a few board members nodding. It wasn't much, but it was something. The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, Maya had approved 2 projects and tabled one that felt too risky. Victor challenged every decision, but she held her ground. When she finally left the building, her legs were shaking. Adrian's mother was waiting in the lobby. "I heard it got heated." "That's one way to put it. You did well. Better than well, actually. Adrian's father said you reminded him of Adrian in his early days. Fierce when it matters." Maya didn't know how to respond to that. She barely felt like herself anymore, let alone like someone else. That night, exhausted and overwhelmed, Maya found herself in Adrian's home office. She hadn't meant to snoop, but a leather journal on his desk caught her eye. She opened it, telling herself she was just trying to understand the man she'd married. The entries went back years. Adrian's handwriting was surprisingly messy for someone so put together in public. He wrote about the pressure of running the company, about his grandfather's expectations, about feeling like he was living someone else's life. Then she found entries about Isabel. "Had dinner with Isabel and her family again. Her little sister. Maya asked me about the new hospital software we're developing. She actually understood what I was talking about. Isabel changed the subject to the wedding venue. I know I should be more excited about getting married, but something feels off. Like I'm following a script instead of writing my own story." Maya's hands trembled as she read. There were more entries like that. Adrian questioning his relationship with Isabel, mentioning Maya in passing, always with warmth, talking about feeling trapped by expectations. She stayed up until 3 in the morning reading his journals. By the end, she felt like she knew him better than she'd ever known her own sister. He was thoughtful and funny in his writing, self-aware about his flaws. He worried about his employees more than his profits. He wrote poetry badly and knew it, but kept trying anyway. The next day at the hospital, Maya sat beside Adrian's bed and did something different. Instead of reading medical journals, she told him about his own journals. "I read your entries about the healthcare initiative in rural communities. I approved the funding today." Victor tried to stop it. "But I told the board what you would have wanted. I hope I got it right." She paused, watching his chest rise and fall with the ventilator's rhythm. "You wrote about feeling trapped. I understand that now. I feel it too, but I promise you something. I'm not going to let Victor destroy what you built, even if you wake up and hate me for reading your private thoughts. Even if you want an annulment the second you're conscious. I'm going to protect your company like you would have." The machines beeped steadily. No response, no sign he heard her. But Maya felt better having said it out loud. Over the next weeks, she fell into a strange, new rhythm. Hospital shifts during the day, company meetings in the evening, visits to Adrian every spare moment she had. She was exhausted constantly, running on coffee and determination. Her colleagues at the hospital started treating her differently. Some were supportive, but others whispered when she walked by. She heard "gold digger" more than once. It stung every time, but she pushed through. Adrian's mother became her unlikely anchor. She'd bring Maya dinner when she forgot to eat, sit with her during difficult board meetings, defend her against Victor's constant attacks. One evening, she squeezed Maya's hand and said, "You're the daughter I always wished I had." Maya burst into tears right there in the hospital cafeteria. All the stress and pressure and loneliness came pouring out. Adrian's mother held her while she sobbed, not saying anything, just being present. 3 months into this bizarre arrangement, Maya realized something that terrified her. She was starting to care about Adrian, not the idea of him, but the real person she'd discovered through his journals and his mother's stories and his employees' loyalty. She found herself talking to his unconscious form about her own dreams and fears, things she'd never told anyone. She told him about growing up in Isabel's shadow, about choosing medicine because she wanted to matter, to make a real difference, about being scared that she'd never be enough for anyone. "The irony," she said one night, "is that I married you to save your life's work, but somewhere along the way you saved me too. You gave me purpose, a reason to be brave." She laughed at herself. "Listen to me, having a one-sided conversation with a coma patient. The hospital psychiatrist would have a field day, but she kept coming back, kept talking, kept fighting for his company and his dreams. Because somewhere in this mess of forced marriages and corporate warfare and family drama, Maya had found something she didn't expect. She'd found herself, and she'd found that maybe, just maybe, she was stronger than she'd ever believed." Maya was reading Adrian's favorite book to him when it happened. 6 months had passed since the accident, and she'd gotten used to the one-sided conversations, used to the steady beep of monitors and the rhythmic sound of his breathing. So when his finger moved against her hand, she thought she'd imagined it. Then it happened again. A definite twitch. Her medical training kicked in before her emotions could. She pressed the call button and checked his vitals, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Within seconds, nurses flooded the room. Then doctors. Adrian's parents arrived 20 minutes later, having dropped everything to rush over. Over the next week, Adrian slowly came back to the world. It wasn't like the movies where someone opens their eyes and everything's fine. He was confused, disoriented, frustrated. His muscles had atrophied from months of lying still. Simple things like holding a cup or sitting up exhausted him. Maya watched from the doorway during his physical therapy sessions, remembering how strong he'd looked in photos from before the accident. Now he struggled to take 3 steps with a walker, but he never complained. That stubborn determination she'd read about in his journals was real. The doctors warned everyone that his memory might be affected. And they were right. Adrian remembered the accident, the impact, the pain. He remembered his life before, but everything after was blank. He didn't remember that his wedding date had come and gone. He didn't remember the crisis with the company, and he definitely didn't remember marrying Maya. His mother broke the news to him gently, sitting beside his hospital bed while Maya waited outside. She could hear the confusion in his voice through the door. "What do you mean Isabel's gone? Gone where?" "Paris, sweetheart. She left right after the accident. She couldn't handle it." A long silence. Then, "And I married her sister?" "Maya?" "Yes. She saved everything, Adrian. Your company, your employees, she's been incredible." Maya didn't hear his response because a nurse asked her to step away from the door. When she was finally allowed in the room, Adrian was sitting up in bed, looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. "Hi," she said awkwardly, standing near the door like a visitor instead of a wife. "Hi." His voice was rough from weeks of intubation. "So apparently we're married." "Apparently so. I'm sorry. I don't remember any of it." "I know," the doctors explained. They stared at each other for a moment. Maya noticed he had dark circles under his eyes and his hair had grown longer than in his photos. He looked vulnerable in a way that made her chest ache. "Thank you," he said finally. "My mom told me what you did, what you've been doing. You didn't have to do any of that." "Yes, I did. Your employees needed their jobs. Your company needed protection. Still, I'm grateful." The conversation felt formal and strange. This was the man whose journals she'd read, whose dreams she'd fought for, whose unconscious hand she'd held for months. But to him, she was essentially a stranger who happened to be his wife. The next few weeks were awkward for both of them. Adrian came home to the penthouse after his discharge, and suddenly they were actually living together. Maya had gotten used to the space being hers. Now she had to share it with someone who was technically her husband but felt like a polite roommate. They developed an unspoken routine. She'd make coffee in the morning while he did his physical therapy exercises. They'd eat breakfast mostly in silence. She'd go to work while his nurses came for his home sessions. In the evenings, they'd have dinner and talk about safe topics like his recovery progress or company updates. But there were moments that felt different. Times when their hands would brush reaching for the same thing and they'd both freeze, or when she'd catch him watching her with a curious expression, or when he'd laugh at something she said and she'd remember that laugh from the videos his mother had shown her. One night, about a month after he'd woken up, Adrian found her in his office. She was working on a company presentation surrounded by papers and empty coffee cups. "It's almost midnight," he said from the doorway. "I know, big meeting tomorrow with potential investors. Victor's been pushing back on everything, so I need this to be perfect." Adrian moved slowly into the room, still using a cane for balance. "Can I help?" "You should be resting. I've been resting for 6 months. Let me help." They worked together until 3 in the morning. Adrian knew the company inside and out, and his insights were invaluable. But what surprised Maya was how easy it felt, working alongside him. They fell into a rhythm, finishing each other's thoughts, building on each other's ideas. "You're good at this," he said as they finally called it a night. "At presentations? At all of it. Running a company. Standing up to bullies like Victor." My mom wasn't exaggerating. "You really did save everything." Maya felt her cheeks warm. "I just did what needed to be done." "No, you did more than that. You could have signed the papers and walked away. Instead, you fought. Why?" She thought about her answer carefully. "Because I read your journals." His eyes widened. "You what?" "I'm sorry. I know that was a violation of privacy, but I needed to understand who you were, what you'd want, and once I knew, I couldn't let Victor destroy it all." Adrian was quiet for a long moment. "What did you think?" "After reading them, I thought you were someone worth fighting for." Something shifted in his expression, a softness she hadn't seen before. "I want to read them again. The entries I wrote. I feel like I'm missing pieces of myself. They're in your desk drawer. Right side." That night marked a change in their relationship. Adrian started spending more time with her, asking questions about the months he'd lost. She told him about the board meetings, about Victor's attacks, about the decisions she'd made. He listened intently, nodding along, occasionally looking impressed or concerned. Then one evening, Isabel called. Maya's phone rang during dinner. When she saw her sister's name, her stomach dropped. She hadn't heard from Isabel in 6 months. Not a text, not an email, nothing. "Aren't you going to answer?" Adrian asked. Maya declined the call. "It's nobody important." But Isabel called again, and again. Finally, Maya answered. "What do you want? Is that any way to greet your sister?" Isabel's voice was bright and cheerful, like nothing had happened. "I heard Adrian woke up." "That's wonderful news." "You heard?" "From who?" "Oh, people talk. I still have friends there. I was thinking about coming home. I made a mistake, Maya. I was scared and I ran, but I'm ready to make things right now." Maya's grip tightened on the phone. "Make things right?" "With Adrian. We were supposed to get married. We can still fix this. I'm sure he'll forgive me once I explain." "You've got to be kidding me. I know you probably had to marry him for legal reasons or something." "That's fine. We can get it annulled. Everything can go back to normal." Adrian was watching her face, clearly sensing something was wrong. Maya stood up and walked to the window, her whole body shaking with anger. "Normal? You abandoned him, Isabel. You ran away to Paris while he was dying. And now that he's awake and everything's handled, you want to walk back in like nothing happened? Don't be dramatic. I was overwhelmed. Anyone would understand that. I don't understand it. And I don't think Adrian will either. Let me talk to him. He deserves to hear my side. Maya wanted to hang up, wanted to protect Adrian from this conversation, but she couldn't make that choice for him. She walked back to the table and handed him the phone. It's Isabel. She wants to talk to you. Adrian's expression was unreadable as he took the phone. Maya stepped away to give him privacy, but her heart was racing. After everything, after all these months, Isabel was coming back. And Maya had no idea what that meant for any of them. She heard Adrian's voice, calm and measured, but couldn't make out his words. The conversation lasted about 10 minutes. When he finally hung up, he sat there staring at the phone in his hand. She's coming back, he said quietly. Next week. She wants to meet. Do you want to see her? Adrian looked up at Maya, and for the first time since waking up, his eyes held real conflict. I don't know. Part of me thinks I should. She was my fiancé. I was going to marry her. But then there's you. Me? You've been here. You fought for everything I care about. You made me laugh during physical therapy. You work too hard and drink too much coffee, and you get this little crease between your eyebrows when you're concentrating. Maya touched her forehead, self-consciously. I don't remember falling in love with Isabel. Adrian continued, but I think I'm starting to fall for you, and that's confusing as hell. The words hung in the air between them. Maya didn't know what to say. Her feelings were all tangled up too. Somewhere along the way, this marriage of convenience had started feeling real. But was it fair to either of them when it had started under such strange circumstances? Before she could respond, Adrian's phone buzzed with a text. Then another, and another. It was Victor, forwarding news articles. The headlines made Maya's blood run cold. Runaway bride returns, love triangle in tech dynasty. Millionaire's wife or gold digger. Sister faces off over fortune. Isabel had gone to the press, and now their private situation was about to become very public. The media frenzy started before sunrise. Maya woke up to her phone buzzing nonstop with calls from reporters, old classmates, and people she barely knew. The headlines were everywhere. Her face was plastered across gossip sites next to photos of Isabel looking glamorous in Paris. The narrative Isabel had spun was cruel and effective. She painted herself as the heartbroken fiancé who'd suffered a nervous breakdown after the accident. Maya was the scheming younger sister who'd swooped in to steal her man and his fortune. The story had everything people loved: money, betrayal, family drama. Don't read the comments, Adrian said, finding her at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone with tears streaming down her face. Too late, she showed him a particularly vicious one, calling her a vulture who'd preyed on a man in a coma. Adrian took the phone from her hands and set it face down on the table. None of those people know what actually happened. They don't know you. It doesn't matter. This is going to follow me everywhere. My colleagues at the hospital are already talking. I saw the way they looked at me yesterday. She wasn't wrong. When Maya went to work that day, the whispers followed her down every hallway. Patients asked to switch doctors. A senior physician called her into his office to discuss whether her personal situation was affecting her professional judgment. I've done nothing wrong, Maya said, trying to keep her voice steady. My work has never suffered. I'm not saying it has. But perception matters in medicine. Trust matters. And right now, there are questions about your character. Maya left his office feeling like she'd been punched in the stomach. She'd worked so hard to become a doctor. Years of studying, sleepless nights, mountains of debt. And now it was all at risk because of a situation she'd never asked to be in. Victor seized the opportunity to make things worse. He filed a legal challenge claiming the marriage was fraudulent. The case went to court, and suddenly every detail of Maya's life was being examined by lawyers and judges. The courtroom was cold and intimidating. Maya sat at a table with Adrian and their legal team, while Victor's lawyers painted her as a calculating gold digger. They brought up every interaction she'd ever had with Adrian before the marriage, twisting innocent moments into evidence of a long-term scheme. Isn't it convenient, Victor's lawyer said, pacing in front of the judge, that Maya was present at family dinners, that she knew about the trust fund requirements, that she was perfectly positioned to step in the moment her sister left? That's ridiculous, Maya whispered to her lawyer. I didn't even know about the trust until after the accident. but proving what she did or didn't know was harder than she'd expected. Victor had done his homework. He had witnesses who testified that Maya had always seemed interested in Adrian. Her own mother, under oath, admitted that Maya had once mentioned thinking Adrian was kind. "And isn't it true," the lawyer pressed, "that you stood to gain millions from this marriage?" "I signed a prenuptial agreement," Maya said firmly. "I don't get anything if we divorce. But while you're married, you have access to considerable resources. A penthouse apartment, company decision-making power, a lifestyle you could never afford on a resident's salary." Maya felt sick. Everything she said was being twisted. The truth didn't seem to matter when the lies were more interesting. Then Isabel arrived at the courthouse on the third day of proceedings. She wore a black dress and oversized sunglasses, playing the part of the grieving ex-fiancé perfectly. Reporters swarmed her. Camera flashes went off like fireworks. Maya watched through the courthouse window as her sister gave a tearful statement to the press. "I just want Adrian to know that I never stopped loving him. I made a mistake, but I'm here now to make it right." Inside the courtroom, things got worse. Victor's team called witness after witness. Company employees who said Maya seemed inexperienced. Board members who questioned her decisions. Even some of Adrian's friends who admitted they'd been surprised by the sudden marriage. But then Adrian's mother took the stand, and everything changed. She sat in the witness box with her back straight and her voice clear. When Victor's lawyer tried to paint Maya as an opportunist, Adrian's mother cut him off. "My son was dying," she said, looking directly at the judge. Not just physically, but everything he'd built was about to be destroyed because of an outdated trust rule. Isabel abandoned him without a word. She didn't even call to check if he was alive. But Maya came to the hospital every single day. "That doesn't prove," the lawyer started. "I'm not finished." Her voice had steel in it now. Maya worked 18-hour days. She fought board meetings while finishing her medical residency. She made decisions that saved 10,000 jobs. She read to my son when he was unconscious. She held his hand during physical therapy. She didn't do any of that for money. She did it because that's who she is. The courtroom was silent. Adrian's mother turned to look at Maya, her eyes wet. "She's the daughter I always wanted, and the woman my son deserves." That marriage might have started out of necessity, but it became real through her actions. Maya couldn't stop the tears. Across the courtroom, she saw her own mother looking down at her hands, shame written across her face. The judge called for a recess. During the break, Maya stood in the courthouse bathroom, splashing cold water on her face when Isabel walked in. They hadn't been alone together since before the accident. Isabel looked perfect as always, her makeup flawless, her hair styled. But there was something brittle in her expression. "You've done well for yourself," Isabel said, checking her lipstick in the mirror. "Mrs. Castellano, living in that gorgeous penthouse, playing executive. Must be nice." Maya dried her hands slowly, choosing her words carefully. "Why are you doing this?" "You're the one who left. I was scared, Maya. I'm not strong like you. I never have been. So you came back to take everything I've built." "I came back because Adrian was mine first." Isabel's voice cracked slightly. "Do you know what it's like? Seeing your little sister living the life you were supposed to have? The life you didn't want," Maya shot back. "You ran away, Isabel. You chose someone else. You don't get to come back now and play victim. He loved me first. Maybe. But I'm the one who stayed." Isabel's mask slipped for just a moment, showing something raw underneath. Jealousy maybe, or regret. "Do you really think he'll choose you? Once this circus is over and things calm down? You're convenient, Maya. You've always been convenient. But I'm the one he wanted to marry." The word stung because part of Maya had wondered the same thing. When the crisis was over, when Adrian didn't need her anymore, would he still want her? Before Maya could respond, Adrian appeared in the doorway of the bathroom. He looked between them, his expression hard. "Isabel, can you give us a minute?" Isabel smiled triumphant. "Of course. We can talk later, Adrian. About everything." After she left, Adrian turned to Maya. "Are you okay?" "I don't know. Am I convenient? What?" "No, Maya, because she's right. I did step into her life. I'm living in your apartment, making decisions about your company, wearing a ring that was probably meant for her." "Stop." Adrian stepped closer, his cane tapping on the tile floor. "Nothing about this was convenient. You made it look easy, but I know it wasn't. I've read my own journals now. I've seen what you did while I was gone, and I need you to know something. He reached out and took her hand. When I woke up and found out I was married to you, I was confused. But the more I got to know you, the more I realized something. I don't care what I felt for Isabel before the accident. That man doesn't exist anymore. The person I am now, the one who woke up to find you fighting for everything I care about, that person is falling in love with you. Maya's breath caught. Adrian, I know the timing is terrible. I know we're in the middle of a legal battle and a media circus. But I need you to know that you're not convenient. You're essential. And after this is over, I want to give us a real chance. Not because we have to, but because I want to. Before Maya could respond, their lawyer appeared. We're being called back in, and you both need to see this. They returned to the courtroom to find chaos. Victor's legal team looked panicked. Adrian's lawyers were huddled together, looking at a laptop screen. The judge called for order. New evidence has been submitted that changes the nature of this case significantly. One of Adrian's lawyers stood. Your Honor, we've just received documentation proving that Victor knew about the drunk driver who hit Adrian's car. Text messages show he paid the man to cause the accident. The courtroom erupted. Victor jumped to his feet, his face red. That's a lie. We have bank records, the lawyer continued. Wire transfers from Victor's personal account to the driver's account, dated 3 days before the accident. In text discussing the plan, Maya couldn't breathe. Victor had tried to kill Adrian. All of this, the coma, the forced marriage, the months of fighting, it had all been orchestrated by someone who was supposed to be family. The judge banged her gavel repeatedly. Order. This court is adjourned pending a criminal investigation. Victor Castellano, you need to speak with law enforcement immediately. As guards approached Victor, he pointed at Maya and Adrian. This doesn't change anything. That marriage is still a fraud. But the judge had already made her decision. Given these circumstances, I find the marriage to be legitimate. Case dismissed. Maya felt Adrian's hand squeeze hers. Around them, reporters were shouting questions. Victor was being led away. Isabel had disappeared from the courtroom. It was over. The legal battle was won. But as Maya looked at Adrian, she realized the harder question still remained. What happened next? The week after Victor's arrest, Maya moved out of the penthouse. Not because Adrian asked her to. He'd actually begged her to stay. But Maya needed space to think, to breathe, to figure out who she was outside of this crisis that had consumed her life for the past 7 months. She rented a small apartment across town. Nothing fancy. Just a studio with a decent kitchen and a view of a parking lot. After months in Adrian's luxury penthouse, the modest space felt like home in a way that place never had. You're really leaving? Adrian had asked as she packed her things. I need to figure out what I want. Not what everyone else needs from me. Just what I want. And what if what you want is here? Maya had kissed his cheek gently. Then I'll come back. But I need to make that choice on my own terms. The judge had given them an easy way out. Despite ruling the marriage legitimate, she'd offered them a 6-month window for annulment, no questions asked. A clean break if they wanted it. The clock was ticking. Maya threw herself back into her work at the hospital. Without the company meetings and legal battles consuming her time, she could finally focus on medicine again. It felt good to be just Dr. Maya again, not Mrs. Castellano, not the controversial figure from the headlines, but she couldn't stop thinking about Adrian. He respected her space, mostly. He didn't show up at her apartment or flood her phone with messages. Instead, he sent small things. A photo of a sunset from his office window with the caption, "Thought you'd like this." An article about a medical breakthrough in telehealth. A terrible joke that made her laugh out loud in the hospital cafeteria. They met for coffee twice a week. Nothing romantic, just talking. He told her about physical therapy and how he was finally walking without the cane. She told him about her patients and the research project she'd joined. They were getting to know each other the way normal couples did, even though they were married and living apart. This is weird, right? Maya said one afternoon, stirring her latte. Dating my own husband? Adrian smiled. Extremely weird, but I kind of like it. There's no pressure. We're just two people seeing if we fit. And do we fit? He reached across the table and took her hand. I think we do. But I'm not the one who needs convincing. He was right. Maya was the one holding back, the one afraid to fully commit. Because once she did, there was no going back. This wouldn't be a marriage of convenience anymore. It would be real, with real stakes and real ways to get hurt. Isabel had gone back to Paris after the trial, her dramatic return ending with a whimper instead of a bang. But before she left, she'd called Maya one last time. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Isabel said, her voice small. "But I need you to know that I'm sorry. For everything. I was selfish and cruel, and you deserved better from your sister." Maya had held the phone, feeling years of resentment warring with old affection. "Why did you really come back, Isabel?" A long pause. "Because I was jealous. You had everything I was supposed to have, and you were doing it better than I ever could. You were stronger, smarter, braver, and I hated that. I never wanted to compete with you." "I know. That somehow made it worse." Isabel's voice cracked. "For what it's worth, Adrian looks at you differently than he ever looked at me. Like you're the sun and he's just trying to stay in your orbit. I don't think he ever looked at me like that." After they hung up, Maya cried, not for the relationship with Adrian, but for the relationship with her sister that might never be repaired. Some damage went too deep. Her parents reached out too, trying to apologize for the pressure they'd put on her, for always choosing Isabel's needs over hers. Her father took her to dinner and actually cried, something she'd never seen him do. "We failed you," he said. "We asked you to sacrifice yourself to clean up your sister's mess, and we didn't think about what it would cost you." Maya appreciated the apology, but forgiveness would take time. Trust once broken wasn't easily repaired. 3 months after moving out, Maya finished her residency. She was officially a doctor now, no longer a resident. The accomplishment felt huge, something that was entirely hers. Adrian came to her graduation, sitting in the audience next to his parents, clapping louder than anyone when her name was called. At the celebration dinner afterward, Adrian's mother pulled Maya aside. "Whatever you decide about the marriage, I want you to know something. You'll always be family to us. Always." The words meant more than Maya could express. That night, Adrian walked her back to her apartment. They stood outside her building, neither wanting to say goodbye. "Can I ask you something?" Adrian said. "And I want you to be completely honest." "Okay. If you could go back to the night before the accident, knowing everything that would happen, would you still marry me?" Maya thought about it. Really thought about it. The sleepless nights, the stress, the public humiliation, the loss of her privacy, but also the growth, the strength she'd discovered in herself, the friendships she'd built. And Adrian himself. "Yes," she said finally, "I would. Because it led me here, to this version of myself that I actually like." Adrian's smile was soft. "That's good. Because I wouldn't change it either. Even the coma part, as weird as that sounds. It brought you into my life." He didn't kiss her. Didn't push for more. Just squeezed her hand and left. And somehow that restraint made Maya want him more. 2 weeks later, Maya made her decision. She showed up at Adrian's office unannounced, walking past his surprised assistant. He was in a meeting with department heads pointing at something on a presentation screen. When he saw her in the doorway, he immediately stood. "Sorry, everyone, can we continue this later?" The executives filed out, a few giving Maya knowing smiles. When they were alone, Adrian walked over to her. "Everything okay?" "I've been thinking," Maya said. "About us. About this weird situation we're in. And I realized something. I spent my whole life doing what other people expected, being the responsible one, the good daughter, the one who fixes things. But choosing you? That's something I want to do just for me." Adrian's expression shifted, hope lighting his eyes. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I don't want an annulment. I want to stay married. But not because of a trust fund or a company or family pressure. I want to stay married because I'm falling in love with you, and I want to see where this goes." He crossed the distance between them in 2 strides and pulled her into a kiss that felt like coming home. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said. "Not the woman who saved my company. Not the doctor or the fighter or any of those things. Just you. Maya. The woman who drinks too much coffee and watches terrible reality TV and leaves books all over every surface." Maya laughed, tears streaming down her face. "I love you too. Even though you fold your clothes weird and take forever in the bathroom. We're really doing this. Making this marriage real? If you'll have me. If I'll have you." Adrian pulled back to look at her fully. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me, even if it started in the strangest way possible." They spent the rest of the afternoon in his office talking about their future. About selling the penthouse and finding a place they could choose together. About Maya's new job at the hospital and Adrian's plans for the company. About maybe getting married again, a real ceremony this time just for them. Can we invite people this time? Maya asked. I'd like to have an actual wedding, not a hospital room and a comatose groom. Whatever you want. Though I'd like to be conscious for it if possible. That seems fair. 6 months later, they renewed their vows in a small chapel. Not the grand society wedding Isabel had planned, but something intimate. Adrian's parents were there, beaming. Maya's parents came too, relationship still healing but improving. Her colleagues from the hospital. His employees who'd become friends, no press, no drama. Just two people who'd found each other in the messiest way possible, choosing to build something beautiful from the chaos. As Maya said her vows this time, holding Adrian's hands with him fully present and smiling at her, she thought about that terrified woman who'd signed papers in a hospital room 7 months ago. That woman had no idea what she was getting into. She'd been scared and pressured and doing her duty. This woman, the one standing here now, was different, stronger, braver, and completely sure. Maya, take you, Adrian, she said, her voice steady, to be my husband. Not because I have to, but because I choose to, today and every day after. When Adrian kissed her, the small crowd erupted in applause. And for the first time since this whole strange journey began, Maya felt like everything was exactly as it should be. Sometimes the wrong beginning leads to the right ending. Sometimes being forced into something shows you exactly what you were looking for all along. And sometimes the person you marry to save becomes the person who saves you right back. Maya had learned that the hardest way possible. But standing there in Adrian's arms, their future stretching out bright and uncertain ahead of them, she wouldn't change a single thing. Well, maybe the coma part. That could have been skipped, but everything else? Every moment of struggle and doubt and fear? It had all been worth it because it led her here, home,